I walked away from my family for a woman who seemed perfect, wealthy, glamorous, everything I thought I deserved. 1 week later, I discovered my ex-wife had secretly built a $32 billion empire while caring for our dying son. The woman I left her for? She was about to destroy everything I had left. This is the story of how I became the villain in my own life, and how karma taught me a lesson I'll never forget. If you've ever made a decision you'd give anything to take back, hit that like button right now. This story gets darker than you can imagine, and I promise you, the twist will leave you speechless. Subscribe because you won't believe where this goes, and trust me, you'll want to hear every word until the end. My name doesn't matter anymore. What matters is what I did and what I lost because of it. 15 years ago, I had everything. I was a pharmaceutical executive pulling in 7 figures a year. I had a wife who loved me, a son who looked up to me, and a future that seemed limitless. Today I'm recording this from a one-bedroom apartment I can barely afford, and the only thing limitless about my life is the regret. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it all began, back when I still thought I was the hero of this story. I met Naomi in medical school. She was 3 seats ahead of me in organic chemistry, and I watched her for an entire semester before I finally worked up the courage to ask her out. She was beautiful, yes, but it was more than that. She was brilliant in a way that made everyone around her seem like they were moving in slow motion. While the rest of us were cramming for exams, she was already thinking 10 steps ahead, asking questions that made our professors pause and reconsider their entire lectures. We got married 2 years after graduation. I went into pharmaceutical sales and business development. She went into research. We talked about changing the world together, about making real differences in people's lives. And for a while we did. We were happy. We were partners. Then Cameron was born, and everything changed. He came into this world fighting. The doctors told us within the first 48 hours that our son had a rare genetic disorder, something so uncommon they had to bring in specialists from 3 different states just to confirm the diagnosis. His body couldn't process certain proteins correctly. Every day was a battle. Every milestone other parents took for granted became our Mount Everest. Naomi made a choice then. She stepped away from her research position to care for Cameron full-time. She said it was temporary, just until we figured out a treatment plan, just until things stabilized. But things never stabilized. Cameron needed round-the-clock care, constant monitoring, endless hospital visits, and Naomi gave him all of that without complaint. Meanwhile, I climbed. I climbed the corporate ladder like my life depended on it. Regional manager, vice president, senior vice president of business development. My salary doubled, then tripled, then quadrupled. I told myself I was doing it for them, for Cameron's medical bills, for Naomi's peace of mind, for our family's future. But the truth I couldn't admit even to myself back then, was that I was running from the pain of watching my son suffer, running from the helplessness I felt every time I looked into his eyes, running from the reality that all my success, all my money, all my connections couldn't fix the one thing that actually mattered. And while I was running, resentment was growing inside me like poison. I'd come home from closing million-dollar deals to find Naomi in sweatpants, exhausted from managing Cameron's care. I'd see my colleagues with their wives at company events, women in designer dresses who talked about their careers, their achievements, their ambitions. And I started to feel cheated, like I'd been promised one life and ended up with another. I know how that sounds. I know how terrible that makes me, but I'm not here to make excuses. I'm here to tell you the truth. That's when Veronica walked into my life. It was at an international pharmaceutical conference in Geneva. I was networking at the hotel bar when she appeared next to me like something out of a dream. Tall, blonde, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my first car. She had this accent, somewhere between French and Russian, that made everything she said sound sophisticated and important. She introduced herself as Veronica Ashford, heiress to a European cosmetics empire. Old money, she said, the kind of wealth that doesn't need to be flashy because everyone who matters already knows. She was in pharmaceuticals now, she told me, expanding the family business into wellness and longevity products. We talked for hours that night. She laughed at my jokes, She was impressed by my position. She made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. The affair started that weekend. I told myself it was just a conference fling, something that would end when we went back to our real lives. But Veronica had other plans. She stayed in touch. She'd text me late at night. She'd send me pictures from Paris, from Monaco, from places I'd never been. She made my life feel small and ordinary by comparison. After 3 months, she flew to the States to visit. We spent a week together while I told Naomi I was at a business retreat. Veronica was everything Naomi wasn't anymore, or at least that's what I convinced myself. She was carefree while Naomi was exhausted. She was exciting while Naomi was predictable. She was available while Naomi was always busy with Cameron. Veronica started planting seeds. Little comments that seemed casual but stuck in my mind like thorns. "Your wife has given up on herself," she'd say. "You deserve someone who matches your level of success." Or, "It's not selfish to want more from life. You've earned it." I let those words poison me. I let them justify what I already wanted to do. Cameron's health was getting worse. The doctors were talking about months now, not years. And Naomi had started working on something, some research project she'd lock herself in the home office to do after Cameron fell asleep. When I asked about it, she'd just say it was related to Cameron's condition, trying to help other families. I barely paid attention. I was too busy planning my exit. I blindsided her with divorce papers on a Tuesday morning. Cameron had just turned 9 years old. The doctors had given him 6 months to live, and I handed my wife of 15 years documents that would legally end our marriage. I expected her to fight, to scream, to cry, to beg me to reconsider. Instead, Naomi just looked at me with this expression I couldn't read. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even sadness. It was something closer to pity. "Is this really what you want?" she asked quietly. "Yes," I said, because Veronica was waiting for me to be free. Naomi nodded slowly, picked up a pen, and signed every page without reading them. My lawyer had been generous to me and ruthless to her. I got most of the liquid assets, the investment portfolio, everything I'd built in my career. She got the house, which still had a mortgage, and what I considered enough to take care of Cameron's remaining medical needs. As I was leaving, Naomi said something that should have stopped me in my tracks. She looked up from those papers and said, "You'll understand everything soon enough. I hope when you do, you can forgive yourself." I didn't know what she meant. I didn't care. I was already gone. Moving in with Veronica felt like stepping into a different world. She had a penthouse downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Everything was marble and glass and expensive art I didn't understand. She threw parties where everyone seemed to know someone important. I felt like I'd finally arrived at the life I was supposed to be living. But there were cracks I chose to ignore. Veronica immediately started talking about investments. Her family had these opportunities, she said, but they needed liquid capital. Time-sensitive deals that could double or triple returns in months. She'd show me impressive-looking documents with projections and forecasts. I was in pharmaceuticals, not finance, but she made it sound so simple, so guaranteed. I also noticed she was vague about her family. When I suggested meeting them or visiting their cosmetics headquarters, there was always a reason why it wasn't the right time. Business complications, family drama. Her father was old-fashioned about her relationships. Meanwhile, I tried to stay involved in Cameron's care, but Naomi had shut me out completely. She wouldn't let me visit. She screened my calls. Through my lawyer, she sent a simple message. "You made your choice. Cameron deserves people around him who chose to be there." That cut deeper than I wanted to admit. But Veronica was there to distract me, to remind me I'd done the right thing, to keep me focused on our future together. 1 week after the divorce was finalized, a colleague mentioned something strange at work. He'd seen Naomi on a financial news segment that morning. Something about a major pharmaceutical company going public. I laughed it off. Naomi probably did some charity work, I thought. Maybe she was on a hospital board or something. I didn't even bother to look it up. That same day, Veronica came to me with an urgent investment opportunity. Her family needed $2 million immediately for a manufacturing expansion. The returns would be extraordinary, she promised, but we had to move now or lose the opportunity forever. I'd never invested that kind of money before, but Veronica made it sound foolproof. And honestly, I wanted to impress her. I wanted to prove I was the kind of man who could make bold moves. So I liquidated my retirement accounts, took out a line of credit against my remaining assets, and transferred $2 million to the account Veronica provided. That night, I received an email from the hospital. Cameron had passed away that afternoon. Peacefully, they said, surrounded by family, Naomi's family. I wasn't there. I wasn't even on the notification list anymore. I broke down in a way I hadn't since I was a child. The guilt crashed over me like a wave, drowning me in the reality of what I'd done. I'd abandoned my dying son for a woman and a lifestyle, and now he was gone. I'd never get to apologize, never get to explain, never get to tell him I loved him one more time. Veronica held me while I cried, but even through my grief, I noticed something. She wasn't really present. She was distracted, checking her phone, her mind somewhere else. The funeral was scheduled for 3 days later. I'll never forget walking into that funeral home. I expected a small, quiet service. Cameron's condition had kept him isolated for most of his life. I thought maybe there'd be 20 or 30 people, family, a few of Naomi's close friends, some hospital staff. There were over 500 people there. The parking lot was full of luxury cars. Inside, I recognized faces I'd only ever seen on television or in business magazines. CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, politicians, celebrities known for their philanthropy, international figures I couldn't even name, and all of them were there for my 9-year-old son's funeral. The charitable donations in Cameron's name were displayed on easels throughout the room. They totaled over $300 million. $300 million. For rare disease research, for children's hospitals, for families struggling with genetic disorders. I was completely disoriented. Nothing made sense. I found Naomi's sister and pulled her aside. "What is happening?" I asked. "Where did all this come from?" She looked at me with pure disgust. "You really don't know, do you? You were so focused on yourself, you never even noticed what she was building." And then she told me everything. While I was climbing corporate ladders and having affairs, Naomi had been revolutionizing medicine. Every night after Cameron fell asleep, every hour I thought she was just doing research. She was actually founding and building a pharmaceutical company from the ground up. She called it Biogenesis Global. Using Cameron's condition as her starting point, Naomi had developed a breakthrough gene therapy treatment, something that could correct genetic disorders at the cellular level, something that could save children like our son. She'd started with a small lab, a handful of researchers who believed in her vision. She'd used her medical school connections, her research credentials, everything she'd put on hold to care for Cameron. And it worked. The treatment worked. Clinical trials showed success rates that made international headlines. Major investors came calling. Pharmaceutical giants wanted to partner. Within 3 years, Biogenesis Global had gone from a startup in a rented lab to one of the most promising pharmaceutical companies in the world. The company went public exactly 1 day before our divorce was finalized. Naomi's stake in Biogenesis Global was worth $32 billion. $32 billion. She'd become one of the wealthiest self-made women in the world while I was signing papers to leave her. She could have fought me in the divorce, taken me for everything I had, and more. Instead, she'd sign quietly and let me walk away with my paltry millions, never mentioning that she'd just become a billionaire. "She didn't tell you because it felt wrong to celebrate while Cameron was dying," her sister said. "She put every cent back into research. She filed the company paperwork in Cameron's name. The entire fortune is set up for rare disease research. It's Cameron's legacy, and you weren't here for any of it." I drove back to the penthouse in a daze. My son was gone. My ex-wife was a billionaire philanthropist, and I'd traded all of it for a woman I'd known for less than a year. When I opened the door, I knew immediately something was wrong. The apartment was too quiet, too empty. Veronica was gone, not just out for the evening, gone. Her clothes, her jewelry, her laptop, everything. The closets were cleaned out. There wasn't even a note. Then my phone rang. It was my bank. There'd been unusual activity on my accounts. Large withdrawals, transfers I hadn't authorized. By the time I hung up, I checked every account I had. They were all empty. A courier arrived an hour later with a package addressed to me. Inside was a private investigator's report. The cover letter was in Naomi's handwriting. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way. I hired them when you first mentioned her name. I thought you should know the truth." The report was thorough and devastating. Veronica Ashford didn't exist. Her real name was Svetlana Petrov. She was a professional con artist with warrants in 4 countries. The cosmetics empire was fiction. The family wealth was a lie. She specialized in targeting recently divorced or divorcing executives, particularly those going through family crises. She'd done this at least 6 times before. The $2 million I'd invested? Gone. The money she transferred from my accounts using information she'd gathered? Another $5.3 million. Gone. She'd even somehow accessed my business accounts. Loans taken out in my name, credit lines maxed out. Total loss, $7.3 million. Everything I'd worked for. Everything I'd destroyed my family for. Svetlana had vanished. The accounts led to offshore havens and dead ends. The private investigator's report ended with a simple note. Subject is highly skilled at disappearing, recovery unlikely. I sat on the floor of that empty penthouse, which I now realized was probably just a high-end rental, not owned by Veronica at all, and laughed. I laughed until I cried, then cried until I couldn't cry anymore. I'd left a woman worth $32 billion for a con artist who'd stolen my last $7 million. The collapse was total and swift. The scandal of the Svetlana situation destroyed my reputation. My company launched an investigation into how I'd been compromised. They found embarrassing details, company information I'd shared with her, contacts I'd introduced her to, business deals she'd nearly infiltrated. I was asked to resign. The financial carnage was even worse. I had to sell everything. The car, the watch collection, even the furniture from my old house that I'd kept in storage. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment in a part of town I used to drive through without looking. But the worst part wasn't the money, it was the isolation. Naomi's family wanted nothing to do with me, obviously, but I discovered that everyone else had known about Biogenesis Global for months. My own family had known. Former friends had known. They'd all watched me destroy my life, and none of them had said a word because they figured I deserved it. Late one night, unable to sleep, I turned on the television and saw Naomi on 60 Minutes. She was poised, articulate, powerful in a way I'd never seen before. She talked about Cameron, about turning grief into purpose, about how every child saved by her research was a tribute to her son's memory. She was radiant. She'd transformed her pain into something meaningful, while I'd let mine turn me into a monster. The doorbell rang the next morning. A courier handed me legal papers, and my heart sank. This was it, I thought. The lawsuit. Naomi was finally going to crush me completely, take whatever scraps I had left. But they weren't lawsuit papers. They were an invitation to join the board of the Cameron Foundation, the charitable arm of Biogenesis Global. I called her immediately. I had to know why. "Hello, David." Her voice was calm, professional, like she was talking to a business associate, not her ex-husband. Why was all I could manage. There was a long pause, then, "Before Cameron died, he asked me to forgive you. He was 9 years old, dying, and he spent his last days worried about whether I was okay, whether you were okay. He loved you despite everything. This is for him, not for you." The position came with conditions. The salary was modest, enough to live comfortably, nothing more. I'd be working directly with families affected by rare diseases, helping them navigate treatments, connecting them with resources. Real work, meaningful work, the kind of work that doesn't come with status or prestige, just the quiet satisfaction of helping people who are suffering. "You can spend the rest of your life running from guilt," Naomi said, "or you can honor our son's memory by becoming the person he believed you could be. The choice is yours. It's always been yours." I took the position. I've been working at the Cameron Foundation for a year now. I live simply. I work hard. I've helped approve treatments that have saved 53 children so far. I know because I keep count. Each one feels like a small redemption, though I know I'll never fully balance the scales. Last month, I saw Naomi at the Foundation's annual gala. She was there with someone, a professor from her medical school days, I learned later. They looked happy together, genuinely happy. She saw me across the room and nodded. Not cold, not warm, just acknowledgement. Later, we spoke briefly by the bar. You look well, she said. I'm trying, I replied. Every day I'm trying. That's all any of us can do. She paused, then added, Cameron would be proud of the work you're doing. It was the kindest thing anyone had said to me in a year, and it broke something open inside me. I'm sorry, I said, even though I'd said it 100 times before. For everything. For all of it. I know, she said simply. I forgave you a long time ago. Now you need to figure out how to forgive yourself. She walked away then, back to her partner, back to her life. A life she built from ashes while I was busy burning everything down. I thought success was money and status, and being with someone who made me look good at company parties. Naomi understood that success was character and purpose, and building something that outlasts you. I traded a queen for a con artist and called it an upgrade. I abandoned my dying son for a fantasy and lost everything real in the process. Cameron's legacy lives on. Biogenesis Global is now worth $47 billion. The treatments Naomi developed have saved thousands of lives across the world. Children who would have died are growing up, going to school, having futures, and every single one of them is a living testament to what Naomi built while I was too blind to see it. My legacy? I almost destroyed myself through greed and ego. But my son's final act of grace gave me a second chance. Most people don't get that. Most people have to live forever with their worst mistakes. I'm one of the lucky ones, even though I did nothing to deserve that luck. If this story made you think about what truly matters in life, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs this message. Subscribe because these real-life karma stories will change how you see success. And drop a comment below. Have you ever realized too late what you had? I read every single one, and sometimes your stories help me forgive myself a little more. They say you don't know what you have until it's gone. But sometimes, if you're incredibly fortunate, you get a chance to spend the rest of your life making it right. I was lucky. My son's love was stronger than my betrayal. His mother's grace was deeper than my cruelty. I'll spend every remaining day trying to be worthy of that gift. It's the least I can do. It's all I can do. And maybe somewhere Cameron knows that I'm finally trying to be the father he always believed I could be.